you, Madam Speaker. And boy, Eileen, does that have a nice ring to it. I know I speak on behalf of all of our fellow Virginia Democrats, how proud we are of you, what dignity and grace you brought to the role of the Speaker. And as you've just gone through with elections make differences, when you were able to take back the House and Democrats take back the Senate, the remarkable amount of change that you've brought about in Richmond, we couldn't be prouder of you. Let me start by again welcoming all of the Virginia Democrats to this virtual convention. I hope that everyone is safe and your families are safe as we go through these remarkable times. I am broadcasting to you today from my kitchen, where some of you may have seen I maybe created a close to a public health nuisance a couple of months back. This was the place where I created the magic on my now infamous tuna melt. And let me again be clear, I would not urge anyone to try that at home. I am listening to Congresswoman Dennings, Eileen, Susan, and some of our speakers this morning. I am so proud of Virginia Democrats. And we are a big family. This is a family that I've been proud to be part of over the last 30 years. Proud to have been Doug Wilder's campaign manager on his historic race back in 1989. Proud to have had the title of being chairperson of the Virginia Democratic Party. Proud to have been your standard bearer in a unsuccessful race back in 1996 against my very good friend, John Warner. Particularly proud of the fact that you entrusted me and my dear friend, Tim Kaine, as your candidate for governor and lieutenant governor, respectively, back in 2001. And with our victory there, that started in the 21st century Virginia Democrats comeback across the Commonwealth and across the country. And as I think over the last 4 years, there is so much work that you've done, so much that we should be proud of. The fact that in 2016, we were smart enough in Virginia to vote for Hillary Clinton. In 2017, for the first time in literally decades, Virginia Democrats swept all 3 statewide offices. In 2018, we picked up 3 great new congresswomen in Elaine and Abigail and Jennifer. And in 2019, we made Eileen Fillercorn speaker, the first woman speaker in Virginia's history. All of that because of the incredible hard work that you were watching and participating in this convention, and literally millions of other Virginians, the work we put in to make positive change in our Commonwealth. Now, I am very proud, I guess officially today, to take, to once again be your standard bearer for United States Senate. And I accept your nomination. I'm proud to receive it. And I promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we hold this Virginia Senate seat as a Democratic Senate seat. My hope as well is that this is going to be the year, as everyone has indicated, where we're going to elect Joe Biden, where we're going to make either get rid of Mitch McConnell, or at the very least make him minority leader. And we're going to be able, I think, right here in Virginia, to build upon our now majority Democratic delegation in the House. So I really thank you for the work that you will do in these coming months. I know the topic that's probably on most of our minds right now is the effect of the pandemic. And in many ways, this pandemic, whether we're talking about a healthcare crisis, an economic crisis, exposure of some of the racial injustices and systemic racism that we've seen in our policing. In a way, this pandemic is almost like an X-ray. And I want to take a moment and speak about each of these 3 topics of how we have to grapple with the healthcare crisis, how we have to grapple with the racial injustice crisis, and how we have to grapple with the economic crisis, and why I'm asking you to help get me rehired so I can continue this work in the United States Senate. On the healthcare crisis, we know with close to 120,000 of our fellow Americans killed by the virus, when we've seen ineptness coming out of this administration in terms of the managing and supply of the PPE and testing, we can and must do better in this country. We need to make sure that we make the CDC, once again, the envy of public health organizations around the world, rather than constantly being behind as we've been with the coronavirus. It's why I've taken the lead amongst all the Democrats in the Senate in making sure that we try to build upon and expand the Affordable Care Act, that we preclude the kind of junk sale of junk healthcare plans that are out there, in many cases, luring in Virginians, oftentimes Virginians of color, to buy healthcare plans that when you then get sick, don't provide any kind of health insurance at all. It's why I want to continue the fight as well to bring down the price of prescription drugs and allow the United States government to have the same ability to negotiate drug prices as other countries provide for their citizens. It's why I want to make sure as well that we build upon one of the silver linings that has come out of the pandemic, and that is greatly continue to expand telehealth opportunities all across Virginia and all across the country. We need to do so much more in healthcare. And if I'm reelected to the Senate, I'm going to continue the fight to expand the ACA and make sure that healthcare is actually affordable for all Virginians and all Americans. The second part of what the pandemic has exposed with the murder of George Floyd and so many other Black Americans is the absolute incumbent need to do comprehensive reform of our policing system. Last night, I was at the First Baptist Church in Vienna, where we held a celebration, but also a reflection upon Juneteenth. Part of that reflection and part of nothing could be a better homage to the notion of Juneteenth than to pass comprehensive police reform. It's why I'm very proud to have been an original co-sponsor, along with Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, in the Justice and Policing Act. And it's my intent that we get a chance, I hope, even this week, to vote on that legislation and to try to make it the law of the land so that all Americans can feel that they're going to be treated fairly, justly, and do not have to see police officers and have a sense of confidence rather than what we have right now, a sense of fear for too many of our fellow Americans. We also need, this pandemic has exposed the enormous economic inequalities in our system and in our country. It's why I'm working real time. And this week, again, we'll lay out a major plan to invest literally billions of dollars in Black-owned banks and community development financial institutions. I believe that we can make capitalism fairer and better, but you can't make capitalism fairer or better, particularly for Black Americans and Brown Americans, unless they have access to capital. And I commit to make sure that in the next COVID package, we make a major investment in those institutions that will lend and provide that capital that's needed in minority communities and low-income communities across America. It's why, as well, I want to get rehired to this job to do much more major changes to our economic system. As some of you know, over the last few years, I've been working on, candidly, a whole new theory of how our economic system ought to work. I'm not going to go through it all right now, but very briefly, let me talk about 3 points that I want to work on if you give me the honor of continuing as your senator. I want to make sure that no matter what kind of work you do in America, that with every hour you work, you also get benefits that go with that work. And those benefits ought to attach to you. They ought to be portable. Just as we've expanded unemployment insurance, we need to make sure that we greatly expand the whole social contract so that whether you're a part-time worker, a gig worker, with work, and the dignity of work should also come the dignity of benefits, health, retirement, and other support. I believe as well we need a fundamental transition on how we view investment in human beings. We have a tax code right now that is way too stacked towards investing in things rather than investing in people. Why should a company get a tax break for buying a robot, but for not training a human being to be more efficient than a robot? We need dramatic change in how we view investments in this country. And frankly, as somebody who's benefited from our system, I think the capitalism that is running rampant in America today, often focused so much only on short-term profits, will ultimately destroy that economic engine of job growth. We need a capitalism in America that is about stakeholder capitalism, where yes, businesses can make money, but they can also invest in their people and in their communities. So I desperately want to be rehired to work on these items. I also want to build on the issue, and as Eileen mentioned, work that we've been doing on climate change. This really is, again, the issue of our time. And part of that work on climate change will be building on the legislation I worked on for 3 years that passed with 73 votes this week in the Senate, where we finally have made the biggest investment in a generation in restoring our parks and expanding access to our land and water conservation fund. So that's another area where I want to get rehired and continue working. I also, as many of you know, am very active in the technology area. That was where my business was. We are seeing a transition to a digital economy. If we're going to make that transition fairly, we need to make sure that ubiquitous broadband is a reality no matter where you live in Virginia. We've got to make sure as well that we put appropriate rules on our social media companies. We should not be at the whim of Mark Zuckerberg in terms of what we see or hear, oftentimes being flat out lies if they come from the mouth of a politician on platforms like Facebook. I also want to continue to build on my work in the intelligence community, where I see the challenges of a rising China, but I realize we have to compete with that alternative vision, not only based upon our economic and military strength, but based upon our values and our strong alliances, things, again, that we know have disappeared under this president. When we talk about values, and I'll close in a moment, I was thinking back earlier this month, June 4th was the 31st anniversary of the protests in Tiananmen Square when the Chinese people rose up against the communist Chinese leadership. And the image that I most remember from those protests 31 years ago was of a young student standing in front of a tank, willing to sacrifice his life for freedom. Fast forward to maybe the most vivid memory that has come out of the protests that have appropriately taken place all across our country. 31 years later was the image of Donald Trump trying to use our military to clear away peaceful American protesters so we could walk over to St. John's Church, the very church where Lisa and I got married 31 years ago, to hold a Bible for a photo op. We are a better country. We are a better people than that kind of propaganda that came out of Donald Trump. One of the many, many reasons why we need to elect Joe Biden this year to make sure that we get a new occupant in the White House that will bring back the basic decency, the basic values that make us Democrats, but also make us Americans. I know in Virginia with elections every year, we always say this is the most important year, but unequivocally, in my 65 years of life, there has never been an election that's more important. And while we've got wind at our back in Virginia, I also have to just acknowledge that I'm forever scarred by 2014. We cannot take anything for granted in Virginia. We know the Trump campaign will target Virginia. I know that my opponent will be decided on in the Republican primary on Tuesday, and they will say anything and do anything to try to take back this Senate seat. So we are going to need to work together on a coordinated campaign with Joe Biden at the top, me leading on the Senate level, and then great congressional incumbents. And I believe possibilities of picking up a couple of additional seats this year if we all turn out and tune in. It's going to be a different kind of election because of the good work of Eileen and Dick Saslaw and Governor Northam. We've got much better, more efficient voting laws in Virginia now. We've got the possibility of voting by mail. We've got the possibility of early voting. We've got Election Day being a holiday. But it's going to mean, particularly with the challenges that the pandemic may still pose, is we're going to have to get our voters to the polls earlier. We're going to have to contact them in a potentially unorthodox ways, and we're going to need your time, your energy, and your support to get this done. Virginia Democrats, we've got a lot of fights in front of us, a lot of struggles in front of us. But if we look back on how far we've come over the last 2 decades, and we've seen the possibilities when we put Democrats in control in Richmond, if we can put Democrats back in control in the White House and in the United States Senate, I believe with all my heart, the best days for Virginia and the best days for our country are ahead of us. So let's get out there and win. Thank you for participating in today's state convention. And I look forward to actually doing this shortly with you as soon as possible in person. Thank you so much, Virginia Democrats.
Thank you so much, Senator Warner. And I know I speak for all of us here today that we so admire your leadership, your hard work, dedication, and we are going to work very hard and ensure that we send you back to Washington. So now it's my honor to introduce another man we all greatly admire. This man has served the United States admirably as senator, as President Obama's vice president for years, standing up for all the issues that matter so much to us. Here now we have the next president of the United States, Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, take it away.
Thank you, Senator Warner. Mark, you've been a good friend a long time, and thank you for that introduction. Hello to Virginia Democrats. I wish that this year we were meeting under different circumstances, separated from one another by a deadly virus, more than 115,000 lives lost, millions out of work, and once again, the words, "I can't breathe," echoing in our ears as we watch the brutal, horrifying killing of George Floyd. It's outrageous and it's enraging. None of us can turn away. None of us can be silent. We're dealing with multiple national crises. We need real leadership right now. Leadership will bring everyone to the table so we can take measures to root out systemic racism. It's time for us to take a hard look at uncomfortable truths. It's time for us to face the deep, open wound of systemic racism in this nation. Nothing about this is going to be easy or comfortable. But if we simply allow this wound to scab over without treating the underlying injury, we'll never truly heal, in my view. The very soul of America is at stake. That's why I'm running for president. That's why I stand united with every single Democrat behind our mission to beat Donald Trump and restore real leadership to the White House. But we have to do more than just beat Donald Trump. We have to keep the House and win the United States Senate back. We have to lead and to deliver meaningful change for people that are hurting all across this nation. And that means we need strong state parties to win up and down the ticket in our states. Virginia is an important battleground state for our campaign in 2020, and we have to do everything we can to make sure Democrats on the ballot across Virginia are successful in November. The stakes in this election have never been higher for our country. So we have to work harder than we ever have. We need to stand up as a nation, stand with the Black community, with communities of color, and come together as one America to deliver justice for all Americans. You know, if we stand together, we'll win the battle for the soul of this nation. We need to do this. We can do this. And with your help, we will do this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. We're so lucky to have you, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I know all of us are going to work tirelessly to make sure that you win, that we win, we take back the White House in November. Thank you again for being with us today. Now we have DPVA Resolutions Committee Chair, Tykeem Cooper, is going to give us a brief resolution committee report. On to you, Tykeem.
Hello, my name is Takeem Cooper, and I'm chair of the Prince Edward Democratic Committee. And this year I had the pleasure of serving as chair of the Resolutions Committee for the 2020 State Convention. I wanted to share a little bit with you about our process and how we got to this point. So 104 resolutions were submitted to the entire Resolutions Committee, and then we selected a subcommittee to go through those resolutions and deliver a package back to the full Resolutions Committee. That subcommittee consisted of 2 Bernie and 2 Biden delegates. Those people were Eric Payne, Karan Sains, Mary Lynn Tate, and Sandra Clausen. I wanted to give a special shout out to them. They spent over 15 hours on the phone deliberating and coming up with a package that we thought would be a great compromise for all Democrats in Virginia. So from this point forward, you all will vote. We have a package that consists of 64 resolutions. According to Section 17.2 of the party plan, 60% of delegates must vote to pass this package. The package was passed from our Resolutions Committee with almost everyone voting in support. There were 2 people who had concerns about 2 specific resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Takeem, and thank you and the Resolutions Committee for all your hard work. Now, as much as I'd like this year to only be about Virginia, Democrats have to win across the country to win the Senate, keep the House, and to win the White House. And we are so thrilled and fortunate today to have DNC Chairman Tom Perez to join us today to talk about how we're going to do exactly that. Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.
Hello, Virginia Democrats. I'm so happy to be joining you. Although I wish I were joining you in person, I'm so happy to be joining you virtually for what I am sure will be an exciting and productive state convention. I know your state party and your chairwoman, your wonderful chairwoman, Susan Schwecker, have been hard at work putting together dozens of virtual caucuses and events over the past few months. Thank you, Susan, for your leadership. Thanks to the team for all of your hard work in the run-up to this virtual convention. You have been so resilient throughout these very, very challenging times. But saying challenging times doesn't nearly capture the difficulty that so many people are confronting at this moment. We have 3 different pandemics. This healthcare pandemic has killed over 112,000 Americans. The economic crisis has put 40 million Americans out of work. And our democracy pandemic, the senseless murder of George Floyd, has exposed and laid bare the work that we have, the unfinished business, which is civil rights. We must acknowledge and continue to acknowledge that 400 years after slaves were brought to this country, civil rights remains the unfinished business of America. And this isn't simply a challenge for African Americans. This is a challenge for all Americans, making sure that America works for everyone and that we realize our true promise as a nation. What all of these pandemics have in common is they have laid bare the failure of Donald Trump. His delayed response to the coronavirus epidemic resulted in the needless loss of lives, the needless loss of jobs. Trump said he was joyous over the nation's double-digit unemployment numbers. Joyous. I don't understand that. And in the aftermath of the brutal, senseless murder of George Floyd, rather than being the consoler-in-chief, he was the divider-in-chief. That is not how leaders should act. Our nation is hurting. Our African-American communities are hurting. And we will not heal through silence, scare tactics, or the status quo. We will only heal through action and activism, through justice and progress, through leadership from the top. Joe Biden has provided that leadership at the top, and Donald Trump has been an abject failure. So long as African-American men and women cannot breathe, our democracy cannot breathe, and we cannot rest. But I continue to have hope that we can make progress. I have hope because of something my old boss, Barack Obama, said in a recent speech about these protests. As difficult as these past few weeks have been, he said, they've also been an opportunity for people to wake up to the systemic racism and violence that African Americans face every single day in this country. And increasingly, they've been an opportunity for people across the country to get involved, speak out, and organize for bold change. I share that hope that out of these crises will emerge a renewed energy, not just among Democrats, but among everyone in America to help build a better America. I've already been seeing this energy firsthand. I had the privilege of meeting and marching with some of the protesters in DC a couple of weeks ago, and I was so inspired by their commitment to equality and justice. I've been inspired by the conversations I'm having every day with party leaders, candidates, activists across the country. And I'm noticing that in battleground states like Arizona, Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina, states that Democrats haven't consistently won in a while, they're starting to feel a lot like Virginia did in 2008, on the verge of flipping blue. And every time I talk to Democrats in these states, they remind me more and more of Virginia's back when Barack Obama was running. They were fired up and ready to go in Virginia back in 08, and they're fired up today. You're fired up today. And voters across all of these critical battleground states are fired up today. They've seen in these other states what you've been able to do in Virginia in 2013, in 2017, in 2018, in 2019. Look at what you've done. You've set a remarkable example for America. And everywhere across the country, we are going to apply the lessons learned in Virginia because you have been a model for other battleground states. You've controlled the governor's mansion since 2013. You won 15 House seats in 2017 and then flipped both chambers of the legislature 2 years later, putting trailblazing leaders like Eileen Filler-Corn, Louise Lucas, and Charneil Herring in leadership. You flipped 3 congressional seats in 2018, electing Abigail Spanberger, Jennifer Wexton, and Elaine Luria, and now have a majority Democratic congressional delegation for the first time in 10 years. That is spectacular. You've set the standard for what Democrats can accomplish when we organize, fight hard, and win. And when I see other states around the country following your model, it gives me great hope. It gives me great hope because Virginia is proof of just how much people stand to gain when they elect Democrats. Look what happened. Governor Northam ran on expanding Medicaid and made it happen. Democrats ran for the General Assembly, promising meaningful gun safety legislation. And look what's happened now that you control the House and the Senate. Our congressional leaders promised progress on issues like healthcare, environmental protection, voters' rights, working rights, to be a check on the corrupt Trump administration. They are making that happen. So much more work to do, but our work has been productive. Make no mistake about it. We've got work to do in 2020. Virginia is indeed a battleground. We Republicans are going to pour millions of dollars into the Commonwealth to try to flip those congressional seats that we won in 2020. Donald Trump talks frequently about flipping Virginia. So we need to make sure we continue to be organized and show the country why Virginia is always held up as a model for up and coming swing states. That's why Virginia is part of the DNC's battleground buildup this year. The path to the White House and a majority in Congress means winning those House seats, re-electing Mark Warner, and making sure your electoral votes go to Joe Biden this November. I've known Joe Biden for a quarter century. I had the privilege of working with him when I served with Senator Kennedy on his judiciary staff in the mid-90s. And Joe Biden was the team captain of the Democrats on that committee. I had the privilege of working very closely with Vice President Biden in the Obama administration. As you know, he is a man of integrity and courage, a man of accomplishment. He spent his entire career standing up for the underdog, for the union worker fighting for a better wage, for the students marching to end gun violence, for women working to stop domestic abuse, for peaceful protesters speaking out against police misconduct. Joe Biden is a truly decent man, and we need decency back in the White House. We need to understand that America is great because America is good. And Joe Biden understands that. And Virginia Democrats will be critical to making sure we send Joe Biden to the White House. It's events like these that help make it happen. You have a strong Democratic Party, from the grassroots of local committees to Chairwoman Swecker's great leadership at the top. I have no doubt about the fact that you are all up to the task. I've spent so much time with all of you, dating back to 2017. I've been proud to partner with all of you. I'm so grateful for all the work you do. So thank you to all of your delegates for being active participants and for representing your districts with such effectiveness. Together, we can win everywhere and anywhere. What Virginia Democrats have accomplished over the past few years has shown the country the strength of the Democratic Party. And remember, our continuing unity is Donald Trump's worst nightmare. So let's move forward together. Let's win in November. Adelante. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chairman Perez. And thank you for being here. Thank you for inspiring us today, this morning, and thank you for all your hard work. Senator Elizabeth Warren has been a progressive leader even before she got to the United States Senate. Her presidential campaign truly helped shape conversation and introduce bold new ideas to our party. So we're really excited to have her here to speak with us today. Senator Warren, the floor is yours.
Hello, Democrats. I know we can't be together in person today, but I wanted to send a word of encouragement to some of the hardest working Democrats in the country. I'll get straight to the point. This is a time of tremendous crisis for our nation. Over 100,000 of our friends, family, and neighbors have died from coronavirus. Millions are unemployed and struggling to put food on the table or to pay their rent or mortgage. And across the country, people are protesting police brutality and demanding justice for George Floyd, for Breonna Taylor, for Ahmaud Arbery, and for so many more. The pain, the frustration, the trauma that Black people are experiencing and have experienced for generations is real. As a nation, we have some serious soul searching to do. Racial disparities persist in wealth, education, employment, housing, healthcare, and at a time when COVID-19 is disproportionately killing African Americans and Black businesses are disproportionately going under, it can feel as if this is the way things have been and always will be. But we are not without hope. The deep injustices we face are not inevitable. They were created and facilitated through racist, hateful, bigoted public policies. And that means that part of the solution can be addressed by different policies, brave, inclusive, moral public policies. And I also want to be thoughtful about the responsibility that I and others have as white Americans in this moment. The idea that communities of color alone are responsible for fighting against racism every single day is both misguided and can have dangerous consequences. We need to ask ourselves what we are doing proactively every day to dismantle racism in our communities, in our workplaces, and in our circles of influence. It is not enough to stand as an ally. We must go further and be anti-racist. At a time when racial injustice tears us apart and a global pandemic threatens our lives and our livelihoods, it is up to us to take action to heal our nation and to save our democracy. Now, none of this will be possible if we don't protect our elections. Elections are the beating heart of our democracy. And if we're going to do the important work of rooting out injustice and protecting families and communities, once we've weathered this storm, then we need to protect our elections. So here are 4 steps that I'm fighting for right now to make it easier for Americans to vote safely during this pandemic. Step 1, Every American should be able to register and to vote safely and easily. End voter purges for the duration of this pandemic and require all states to offer online registration. Wisconsin and Georgia have accelerated efforts to remove hundreds of thousands of people unnecessarily from their voter rolls. This pandemic must not be used as a cover for racist voter purges. Step 2, keep voters healthy by making the process of casting a ballot easier and more accessible. Give everyone the option to vote by mail. Enhance the safety of in-person voting, including offering 30 days of early voting and extended polling hours. Step 3, fight disinformation and increase election security. Russia and China have already begun to peddle the conspiracies that we need to fight back. And step 4, give states the resources they need to administer the vote and keep poll workers safe. Protecting elections is going to cost billions, not millions. The task of healing our nation and protecting our democracy has never been more vital. This is a fight that comes to us, and we cannot afford to back down. Lives are on the line. We face an uphill battle, but I am confident that if we stand together, if we fight together, if we persist together, we will make it through this time of crisis and build a better nation. So stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you so much, Senator Warren. Thank you for joining us today. Now I'd like to introduce and welcome Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders ran an excellent primary campaign that brought so many new people to the party, and now he is all in to help elect Joe Biden in November. Senator Sanders, the floor is yours.
Hello, my friends in Virginia, and thank you for allowing me to say a few words, and I will be very brief. All of you know we are living in an unprecedented moment in American history. You got a pandemic, you got an economic collapse, and we have a president of the United States who clearly has never read the Constitution of the United States and who has very little regard for civil rights or for civil liberties. So at this moment, it seems to me we got to focus on two basic issues. Number one, we all have got to come together to defeat Donald Trump and to elect Joe Biden as our president. Number two, we have also got to keep our eyes on the prize in terms of what kind of nation we want to be in the future. It's not just good enough to defeat Trump. We have got to transform America and create a government and an economy that work for all of us and not just the wealthy few. So I look forward to working with you in the months and years ahead as we get rid of an incredibly destructive, divisive president, and as we move this country in a very different direction. Thank you all very much.
Senator Sanders. Now we turn to DPVA's Voter Protection Coordinator, Jessica Jefferson. She's going to explain the voting procedure. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Greetings, everyone. I am Jessica Jefferson, the Democratic Party's Voter Protection Coordinator. Voting will begin at 1 p.m. today and close at 7 p.m. on Sunday. Results will be announced on Monday, so be sure to stay tuned in for those. This weekend, you will be voting on national delegates, Democratic National Committee members, at-large presidential electors, and the state convention resolutions package. All state delegates should have received their unique 6-digit code along with a link to their ballot via email. If you are a state delegate and you have not received your unique code, you can email us at political@vademocrats.org. If you don't have access to the internet, you can call me on our DPVA voter hotline at 844-482-8683. Please make sure you proofread every portion of your ballot. The only way there can be an error in a Google form is if you enter incorrect information. If you vote more than once, your last vote will be the only one that is counted. Again, voting will open at 1 p.m. today and close at 7 p.m. on Sunday. Please make sure you submit your ballot by then or it will not be counted.
Thanks, Jessica, for that explanation. Appreciate it. And to all the delegates, please let DPVA staff know how best to answer any questions you might have. Delegates, thank you so much for the honor of allowing me to serve as chair of this convention. What an incredible day. Amazing speakers, an incredible group of Democrats on this call, ready to elect Joe Biden, the next president of the United States, ready to re-elect Senator Mark Warner and make progressive gains throughout the Commonwealth and our country. Thank you so much to DPVA Chairwoman Susan Swecker and her incredibly hardworking team for putting this virtual convention together. Now we look forward to November. This election will define our nation for generations, no doubt about it. We all know this is an election that no one can sit out. With 136 days of hard work, of determination, and commitment to this important cause, working together, we will reclaim the soul of this nation. So I say, wear a mask, socially distance, work hard, and let's go blue. And with that, I want to thank Madam Chairwoman for virtually passing on to me this gavel. The business of this convention is now completed. The convention will reconvene tomorrow at 1 p.m. We are now adjourned.